Welcome to the Soar to Success Summit. I'm Vanessa Levin, your host, and joining me on the stage today is Shannon McCartney. Welcome, Shannon.
Hi, thanks so much for having me. I'm super excited.
Well, we are excited to have you here. And for those of you watching who are not familiar with Shannon, let me tell you a little bit about her. So Shannon is the founder and CEO of Strategic Intervention Solutions. She's an international educational consultant and author with more than 15 years of teaching experience. She's a highly sought after professional development specialist, well known for her practical and enthusiastic training style. Her M3 Molding Math Mindsets Training and Coaching series helps teachers embed numerous concepts within 21st century teaching and reasoning in math. She's the creator of several popular math resources, including My Counting Buddy, Decadots, and Math Mites. So welcome to the stage, Shannon.
Thank you.
I'm so excited to be talking with you today. Shannon and I used to speak on the same speaking circuit, so we've crossed paths in many different states.
Yep.
And I'm very familiar with her expertise and wealth of knowledge in the area of math. So I wanted to bring Shannon on today to talk with us about playful math for two reasons. The first reason, Shannon, is because you're a math expert. And second, I often get questions from teachers who say they struggle to teach numbers to their students, or their students struggle to learn numbers. But they don't often ask me how to teach other math skills that we know are important, like one-to-one correspondence or subitizing. So let me just ask you this to start off the session. Is numeral identification the most important math skill for our students to learn in preschool or pre-K? Take it away.
I kind of wish I had a fairy wand that in the United States that we'd look at early childhood development a little bit different, meaning that we wouldn't necessarily be looking at whether or not kids can identify, the number three. If they were to see the number three and they look at that, and if they don't, recognize it, does it mean that they don't have necessarily the math skill that they need? And actually, that's really incorrect. We have a lot of kids that really need to really have, kind of have this pyramid that we look at for development, and we look at the first step of it is really with real life, experiences with real objects in the physical world. A lot of our kids learn a lot about, math really from exploring, and so we want play and interactions with students that they can look at how to build blocks. If they build blocks on one side and they run out of a block, how do I get the other side, to match that if I'm out of a certain color block? And it really kind of helps for kids to really have those experiences with building and playing first, and sort of have that language for what numbers are about. I think when we get kids, especially in a pre-K or preschool classroom, to have play kind of for that first half of the year with a lot of number sense type things integrated into it, I think the kids can have a lot better stepping stone to kind of get to that next layer of learning, which is really them developing that kinesthetic layer. And so we have a lot of kids in math that, if we were to think about, something simple like one-to-one counting. I have one of our counting buddies that's kind of a macrame beaded buddy that we use to do a lot of counting. And, sometimes I'll sit with preschoolers and we'll want to get the one-to-one correspondence and, maybe be focusing on the number recognition. And we do great models for kids, of 1, 2, 3, 4. Now you go ahead and do it. When the student goes to try to count, as much as we're trying to slowly count the manipulatives and hope that they get kinesthetic one-to-one, it's really them counting similar to this: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and they're only at 3. And so I think teachers in preschool, sometimes we think about, okay, well, then they must just need more practice with the one-on-one, correspondence. But the reality is first they need that layer of real objects in the physical world to really know about numbers and have that number sense. And then really it's then with their body to be able to build kinesthetic one-to-one correspondence. And so we really want to look carefully at students in preschool, not to make sure that this is the concrete level, of the learning, but can students walk on, something like a poly spot? This is kind of what you might see like in a PE department, but do the kids, we have videos on our website that we have kids kind of walking on the poly spots and seeing, do they really have the one-to-one correspondence piece, this would all really really come before numeral, understanding.
I like it. So let me just ask you some clarifying questions because I'm sure if I have questions that our audience does too.
Yeah.
So, what I hear you saying is that before they can get to that level of understanding when it comes to one correspondence, they need to have experiences playing. Is that correct?
Yeah, so we call that layer in the pyramid real objects in the physical world. So, it's kind of like the oral language base that we think of for reading, but in this case, it's the oral language base for math. And it's getting kids to be able to, quantify, things like playing in a kitchen and being able to, I'm going to be passing out or setting a table or, sand and water, and understanding the equations that really go on in a sand and water table to get that understanding that has to come before we're ever going to even look at one-to-one correspondence.
I like it because then that brought up another idea or sparked an idea or question for me.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about then students who maybe come to us without a lot of background knowledge or experience with play. Perhaps they're from a at-risk situation where they don't have a lot of interaction with other children and they don't have a lot of opportunities to touch and manipulate objects, whether that's blocks, cars, trucks, whatever at home. And they come to us without a lot of background knowledge of how to play and how to interact with things. Would you say that play in the classroom then could support a child like that better?
Yeah, absolutely. I go on a lot of home visits into some of our preschool programs, and typically in the home, it's not equipped with, games or like blocks or Legos and things. And so kids are kind of programmed to really be plugged in. And so although there's lots of really great things online, that early childhood belief that kids need to have that experience is really part of it. And so getting kids we have one of the stations in our pre-K kindergarten, our first grade classrooms is actually called a math tool exploration station. And so each classroom has something called a math salad bar that I kind of coined the name of it to make it a location so we can do it from pre-K all the way to fifth. But the math salad bar is simply a cart with 5 drawers on one side and 10 on the other, salad bowls on the top, and those tools are used. The drawers can come off of those mobile carts. But I was just in a kindergarten classroom that they were just exploring. It's like, what standard are they working? They're working on a lot of math standards, when you look at that. But the kids in the conversations that they're having or hearing with other peers of, wow, this hexagon, this red one, the 2 red ones go inside of, the yellow one, they're starting to explore. And without that prior experience, when we look at that pyramid, kids come in with this deficit in the area of math if we don't provide the play opportunities in early childhood classrooms.
That's where the bell just went off for me. I love it. That's great.
Yeah.
If we don't provide these play opportunities, then we're not building that solid foundation.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I love it. I love it. So
Yeah.
let's jump into the next one then. That brings us to the next question. How do teachers know where to start when it comes to teaching math to young children? This is a question I get all the time because there's not just one thing to learn, right? There's so many parts and pieces that go into math. How do we know where to start?
Well, I think looking first, at a child's physical, their whole physical body is really a part of it. Not a lot of people think of this, but when you look at a child, being able to, I did a video on my website where I have a child skipping or like crossing their midline, and all the different parts of the brain that have to be interacting. And so if I can go to a second grade classroom and tell the kids, okay, line up on the blacktop and I want you to skip, going across the blacktop. I can pick out, is this child, and this child, the kids that are struggling in your classroom? And typically the teacher says, how'd you know that? Because skipping is a rhythm. It's a kind of a learned pattern, if you will, that really links itself to math. just like dynamic and static balance. So a child walking, heel to toe versus maybe, putting their arms out, closing their eyes, and putting one leg up and counting to 6 without falling over. That is a readiness skill for reading. So just as we know about the brain and the way the brain works, really for math, I know it sounds like, not mathematical, but really their physical body, and looking at a screener to kind of see where are our kids motor wise in preschool and pre-K. Where are they able to cross their midline? Can they skip? Can they do lots of things with catching out in front of them instead of using their body for convergence and tracking? So we kind of always first look at sort of the motor first, if you can kind of put that sort of in one spot. But the other part really goes back to that real objects in the physical world, that kids are having rich conversations about how numbers really are related to each other. And so I think for that, kids that come in and they're not counting, that it means they're not hearing the rhythm, or they might count 1, 2, 3, 5, 7, 9. You can't really assess kinesthetic one-to-one correspondence until a child can count to 10, because I don't know if necessarily you're counting and kind of walking and corresponding it. I kind of relate that idea of the kinesthetic one-to-one correspondence very similar to rhyming. So if I said cat, hat, and the kid says water bottle, we know that they really aren't able to connect that rhyme. And so although I can't make kids rhyme, I can provide lots of experiences with music and fun and play to help get that rhyming in. It's the same thing with kinesthetic one-on-one correspondence, that if kids are fluidly skipping and having the patterns that they're doing, they're eventually, as they're counting and kind of learning those parts to it, they will start to be able to walk and count their steps, which is that beginning phase, if you compared it to reading, like rhyming.
Okay, that was amazing, because I don't know that everyone out there in the world knows that movements, body movements, or kinesthetic learning, as you said, has such an impact on skills like math. I mean, that is really profound. So I want to delve a little deeper into that with you, if you will.
Sure.
Because we, as early childhood professionals and parents, we know that playing and moving is super important, but there are specific ways to move. And you mentioned a few of those, like skipping. So, so for those teachers watching who are perhaps in a situation where they're in a public school setting where they're mandated to do a lot of, meeting the standards type of thing, and they have to support play, right? They have to, or defend, I should say, they have to defend play to those people in charge. I think this information is going to be a gold mine for those folks, but also for everybody as well, because I think that if we can make that connection in our brains between math and movement, I think that's going to make a big difference for all the kids in our classrooms. So could you tell us you talked a little bit about those poly spots and a little bit about skipping. Could you give us like one or two very specific things that teachers could do in their classroom, like maybe at the very beginning of the year to start off?
Yeah, I think one of the things is I kind of look at things as like skill-based checklists. And of course, we have all those ones that are standard-based. But this idea is really the development of a child. And so one of the programs that's on our website called Motor Skills for Academic Success is that precursor. And there's a screener that we actually do with pre-K. We also do it with kindergarten and first grade, because that whole early childhood window has that long, development. But some of the skills that you want to have on the checklist are really, can they skip fluidly? Can kids, catch a ball out in front of them, or do they catch it, with their whole body? Because in order to have tracking, convergence and then tracking, kids have to be able to do those skills, whether it's in reading or in math. Other things is crossing midline. We have a really great video that kind of looks at, kids crossing their midline, and then I correlate that to what their readiness is in math. And the kids that can't cross their midline, can't skip, are those same kids that we found that cannot not do the kinesthetic one-to-one. So having kids, trying to see if they're, crossing midline would be another great thing. It's kind of, that catching piece, the skipping piece. Obviously, static and dynamic balance is also, that readiness skill that we want kids to have to be able to be focused for reading and in the literacy areas. But I think having this checklist, whether you look at it gross motorly or even fine motorly, one of the first books I wrote was called Finger Fanatics, because we were looking at visual motor integration of kids and fine motor integration. And all of those systems have to be working together for the brain really to be ready to learn academic things. And I would say the kid today in the 21st century is coming in more and more delayed in the area of motor, which, motor matters for that academic, the academic success of students.
Wow, I love this. This is good stuff, Shannon.
Yeah, it's important, right? We don't often think about it. Like, I feel like in schools, we're not paying attention to the whole child in so
Yep.
many ways. It is like what you said. It's all about the standards and checking the list. Well, I mean, all I say is that we're making at-risk kids. Here's the
Yes.
bubble of the at-risk kid. You leave a layer of any of these pieces off.
Yes.
That's that when it starts to become Swiss cheese. As they get older, we have to recognize. And I always say we can't stop trying to argue with early childhood development, because
Yes.
the development of children is really where we have to look at.
Oh, preach it, sister. I love it. Okay. Um, so I think that for a lot of us, a lot of early childhood educators who are caught up in the this system of public education, or just this pressure of standards, is that we often look at things like math, writing, literacy, gross and fine motor as being separate skills. And
Right.
what I hear you saying is that a lot of these skills go together. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah. And I think until we start looking at that more, we can find the layers where kids need strategic help.
Ah, I love it. I love it. Okay. So that brings me to my next question. So, what about, and I get this question a lot, and perhaps you do too, I don't know, but what about teaching a number a day or a number a week, or focusing, for example, on one skill like one-to-one correspondence on Monday, and then subitizing on Tuesday, and then, kind of compartmentalizing math learning like that? What are your thoughts on that?
I think, it's kind of like when I think about intervention in some of the schools. We do intervention, Shannon, from 10 to 10:30. Well, no, intervention doesn't just happen in this little small time. I mean, mathematics is really all around us. Whether or not you enter that into your routine, so you make sure you get to those things, it's great. We do a lot with, numeracy talks with the kids. Really we don't involve number, but it's really more about that skill of kind of subitizing, or sort of knowing the difference between, maybe 5 on a 5 frame versus 5 in a scatter. You certainly could have different themes that you could tap into each day, but you want to look at it, I think, in a systematic approach. The first approach is really that mathematical thinking is all around us. One of the articles that I wrote for our Head Start programs and some of our Great Start Readiness was really talking a lot about this idea that, you can create a math-friendly community, in your classroom, and you can also create, a math-friendly home, in your house. That mathematical thinking is really all around you, whether or not you're having snack time, or you're counting for kids to line up. It can be happening at all different times. It doesn't necessarily have to happen, just at this small time. So I think kind of integrating those pieces of it, but at the same time being strategic as to how you're doing it, kind of looking, obviously it's at the kinesthetic level, but as we move beyond the kinesthetic level, usually partway through, let's say our 4-year-old preschool year, we want to start to systematically look at quantity of numbers more, and kind of, have that sort of threshold throughout the year as you're looking at it.
Wow, I love it. So I hear you saying mindset, right? And strategic,
Yeah.
which makes perfect sense since that's kind of the title of your company.
Yeah, that's how we call it, that strategic intervention solutions, right?
I was like, oh, now I know why she named it that.
Yes.
But a lot of it is about reshaping our thinking around math.
Right.
Because maybe a lot of us, well, I know me for sure, I did not grow up learning math in that way. Math was not all around me. It was from 9 to
Mhm.
9:50,
Yeah.
and it
Yeah.
was taking place in a workbook with no hands-on materials. So for those of us who grew up in that way, this type of thinking requires us to make a mindset shift. Would you agree?
Mhm. Yeah, and I think part of it stems with parents. I think, parents understanding, what mindful play is at home. And so, partly the article that I kind of have as a bonus for the teachers to get, or even parents that are listening, is really what are the activities? And sometimes to teachers, I think we think of the parent that, you know, maybe they're naive or they don't know, but really the true, when I do parent workshops, it's like I didn't know that I should, I didn't think about while we were going for a walk, to have my child put stuff in a bag, and then when we get back, kind of sort it by attribute. And so in the article, we kind of explain really easy things that families can do and to show the power behind those conversations happening. And then obviously integrating that into the classroom, where you kind of have that concept that math skills can be applied to lots of things that you're doing.
I love it. Love, love, love it. And it kind of takes the pressure off us as teachers, and even as parents, to realize that there is no one thing you can. I get asked this question a lot. What's the one thing I can buy to help teach my kids math? Like, you're talking about going on a nature walk and putting things in a bag and then sorting them by attribute, right? I mean, it's not like
Yeah.
they need to have 8 million things from the fancy teacher store. A lot of
Right.
this type of learning that you're talking about is are things that can be already found in most classrooms.
Yeah, that's kind of what we say math is all around us. Most of the things in the article, it's just like picking up the remote. Even if you have that, there's something math you can do with that. Even looking at a bowl of Cheerios, there's so many things that we can use in the early childhood classroom to do that.
I love it. So I think that we have a good idea of so far this whole being strategic about teaching math, about thinking about it in more of an integrated way, and
Yeah.
being more kinesthetic in our teaching. So let's talk now about math activities that early childhood educators and professionals can do that focus on those right skills. And this is, I'm sure, your absolute wheelhouse. I know this is what you speak about all over the
Yeah.
country. You were just in Pasadena and you're headed off to Nebraska. So you talk to teachers about this everywhere. So hit us with your best stuff, Shannon. Go for it.
Well, I think I kind of this takes from a personal experience for my son. He's now in fifth grade, so I think he was in preschool yesterday. But but I vividly remember in my son's preschool classroom seeing a list above the coat rack that said, "I can recognize my numbers 1 to 13." If your child could do that, the name was on the public list for everyone to see. Thinking back, not the best way to do that. But I remember looking and thinking, I wonder what it is that Connor, what numbers he's not recognizing in his 4-year-old preschool. We looked at the portfolio, and I noticed it was a lot of his teen numbers. And so, I kind of thinking about this strategic way of the way you think about early childhood and the way math is looking is, I said to the teacher, how's Connor doing in the area of numeracy? And the answer I got was, he's doing well. He can count to 100. He's skip counting by 10s. We're working on skip counting by 5s. He's having a little bit of trouble with those tricky teens, but we're going to get there. I really talked to her about the layers in development. So you kind of have that real objects in the physical world. You have the kinesthetic layer, but where in the second half of the 4-year-old program do we really go with kids? And so I vividly remember showing Connor, 13. This was one of the ones that things that he couldn't identify. We kind of screened her kids. I'm really big about screening and then strategically figuring out where kids are, even just really quick screeners. But I asked him, how many do you see? Connor went through and 1 to 1 counted all of these, which is what I predicted. I was super happy that he got all of them right. But really, at the end of the day, what are we saying, when we're talking about just the digit or the number? It's not necessarily that Connor needs to even recognize the number 13. It's really more important that he understands what numbers are made up of. So I kind of think of this as like the phonemic awareness for math. You want your kids to be able to do onset and rhyme and blending and segmenting and all of those things. But kids have to have a play on the understanding. And certainly it doesn't need to be in the digit format. In some countries, we look at the sounds first and then we worry about the letters, right? That's kind of the idea in math, is that we look at this. So for Connor to have a checklist of that he didn't understand the number 13, to me as an early childhood educator, I thought, okay, I'm not worried about it, because right now he's not even aware that this is equal to 10 and that this is equal to 3. And when I put that together, that's what makes it 13. So if you kind of think of those layers as you go into different activities in your classrooms, it's important to know what that looks like. And so, things like we talked about here, poly spots. I mean, you don't have to order poly spots from our website. You could go to the dollar store and you could cut out shelf liner. It's kind of a sticky, spot where you could put, we don't put the digits on the poly spots for kinesthetic because we want kids to be able to have that counting and cardinality understanding that when I'm walking, to the 4, it's not the digit 4, that it actually means 4 in succession. So being able to figure out in your classroom, what are really fun, easy stations that you can do to develop kinesthetic one-to-one correspondence, whether it's a hula hoop and kids are throwing bean bags and they throw 5 bean bags, how many of them made it into the hula hoop and how many made it out? That's really you early on working on missing add-in concepts, but it's really more in a play-based way. So looking at the things in your classroom and saying to yourself, how could I come up with 1 or 2 math stations that are kinesthetic based? And so, a lot of us are familiar with the Math Their Way book that's online. I believe you can get it for free now, but it's all filled with that kinesthetic. Once kids can develop that part of it, it's then moving into the concept of conservation. Conservation can develop as early as 4 years old. I have 5 fingers. I'm never going to grow anymore. I really hope I'm not going to lose any, but this is always 5. And so as we get to that second half of the year, thinking maybe like in a 4-year-old preschool, this is 5. But when I ask a child to add on 2 more, they typically do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you say, well, how many was this? And they know it's 5. And so you want to look at the layers of their understanding. And so I was just working for a week in one of our preschool programs and had just a blast. A lot of kids, were doing a lot of different subitizing activities, which I think subitizing kind of has this big buzz about it. There's no math checklist that says, can your pre-K or kindergarten student subitize? The skill that we're looking for kids to do is conservation to the number. Now, if I were to look at a 5 frame, I might know that there's 3 and there's 2 empty. That's why I know that it's 5, right? And so we'd want kids to have this experience of relating to 5 because they might be turning 5 and have that connection versus just tell me quick and tell me how many. It's really tell me how many without counting. And subitizing is a strategy in which works for some students to help them develop conservation. But what you want to know as a pre-K or kinder or preschool teacher, you want to be able to look at if they can recognize, 3, but if they can recognize, 4 this way. So even if I kind of have a bigger 5 frame here, that they would know that it's 4 when they look at it, but can I turn it this way? Do they still know that it's 4 or do they go back to counting? If kids have that, then do they know that this is 4? And so it's that layer of conservation where we call it 3 ways plus the traditional. That the traditional way is like counting 1 to 1. Right? But if they do the 5 frame, one way, can they transfer that skill to it this way? And then can they transfer to it this way? So a lot of times we see, the 10 frame being done way too quickly in the pre-K classroom. A lot of kids, I'll be honest, just memorize the 10 frame. So they really want to be able to help to be able to understand the layers of development when you look at the concrete pictorial abstract. And so getting kids to kind of manipulate that in your classroom that really don't involve a lot of things. I mean, if you don't have subitizing cards, you can get a plate and put dots on it. You don't need to necessarily purchase something to get this skill really going in your classroom.
Wow, wealth of information. So I took a lot of notes here, so I like it. What I hear you saying is that a focus perhaps less on the identification of the actual numeral in the very beginning
Mhm.
stages of preschool
Yeah.
and focusing more on the kinesthetic and then also looking at the conservation. That really made perfect sense to me and I love it. And it reminded me of all the activities that we do in the early childhood classroom using dice, right?
Yes.
They
Hmm.
already have those little dots on them, but also then
Yeah.
taking that to another level and then building in activities that involve the five frame, like you said, in different directions and really building that conservation. I really,
Yeah.
really like that. And it doesn't have to be fancy, like you said.
It doesn't. I always say math isn't cute. Like you don't have to have, this special thing to do something. A lot of it is just is playing with it. But I think on the strategic end of it is knowing my students, that a child might look at this and say 4, but as soon as I change it this way, they say that it's 5. So is that child, just because they can recognize the 10 frame and quote unquote subitize it, doesn't mean they have conservation to 5. So which students or at this level versus this level? And then how am I differentiating that exploration with students that way?
Aha, differentiation. You said another buzzword there.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I love it because when you're strategic about your teaching, whether that's in math or anything, you
Mhm.
are then able to differentiate more successfully. Would you agree?
Absolutely. I think once, kind of looking at the screeners, we have a numeracy screener that we give our kids. One of the ones they can download for free on our website is just a kinesthetic one-to-one, just to kind of see do they have it or do they not. And then as you start to look at this level of conservation, like do they just know the 5 frame or do they really have conservation to know that 4 is made up of 1 and 3 or it's 1 less than 5 and they can kind of manipulate that. And I think once you know where the kids are, those activities could still be play based, but kind of slid in. I always say differentiation is invisible in your classroom. It's not that one kid is doing, the lower level sheet that we're all playing, let's say like a deco dot game, which is a deck of cards that I kind of created that has different levels kind of already infused in it. But we walk in and it looks like everyone's playing same, less, more. But I have strategically put the levels of the cards that they're using based on their understanding of where they are.
I love it. So
Mhm.
you have talked a lot about, I want to ask you specifically about the screener that you talked about, because I am thinking about it while you're talking, and I'm thinking, why did I not have this earlier?
Right. Yeah, right? Yeah.
And how would it have changed my teaching if I'd had it at the beginning of, last school year? So I want you to tell us about where teachers can get this screener, because I know everyone watching is going to want to know how to get it. And then you've talked a little bit about Deca Dots and a little
Uh-huh.
bit about the My Counting Buddy. And I want you
Yeah.
to show us those again and then tell us where we can find them, because what happens is teachers see this and they say, oh, that's exactly what I need. Where do I get it? And then we get 8 million emails. So I want them to hear
Right.
it
Yeah, for sure.
straight from
Yeah.
you,
Yeah.
and where they can find these resources, and maybe just what specific skills, if any. I mean, they I'm sure they cover a lot, that each one of these will help them teach, because that's going to be the key. Go for it.
Absolutely. So, one great hub or a place to go is our website, which is SIS, the number 4 teachers.org. That's kind of my way of this, second half of my teaching career, giving back to teachers. Yes, I published, I think my 14th publication just came out, but a lot of our stuff is just free stuff that I just want you to grab and use it in your classroom. And so you can search under the math resources, and then you can click through to the math of the teacher. And we have like a subitizing, area where you can go to. It has lots of different skills in it. You also can search for the numeracy screener that we have. The one that works on kinesthetic, you can just download it for free. For kinder, it's just really a 2-question thing. Can they walk on the poly spots or not? And I even have videos showing you what it might look like and what it should look like. So we have a ton of stuff that we're kind of building on our YouTube channel to do more video-based things. So those are things that you could check out and really just start looking at pre-K and preschool and saying, okay, we're going to look to see that every kid has this. The motor skills for academic success, that's in our store. And that is not my product, it's Nancy Sorensen's that we sell, but it has on there the motor screener that we've talked about. So the other tool that I have developed is called My Counting Buddy. This is the Counting Buddy Junior, 10 and 10. We use this in a lot of our preschool, pre-K classrooms, and even in kindergarten. And then we also have a Counting Buddy Senior that's used in the latter part of kindergarten and first grade, where he's got 10 and 10. The reason why I developed the Counting Buddy manipulative is because I always felt like I was trying to make a point with stuff in school and classes, and I'd get out counters. And then, at the time I'm getting the counters out, my whole point is lost because counters are everywhere. And so the Counting Buddy is a great way that it's kind of on a macrame beaded system that you can use with students in the classroom. It can be used for multiple uses. So obviously it could be used as a fidget. So if I was, just kind of sitting and listening, I could still use it as a fidget. I use it a lot in ELA as well, having kids count their words and their sentences. So I went to the park. How many words were in your sentences? As I'm writing the lines in for my students, I want you to use it and stretch your sounds out using the Counting Buddy. So w and t, or you could use it for phonemic awareness. I wrote a book that goes with the Counting Buddy that has 50 activities that you can do with them for parents or even teachers. A lot of our preschool parents, they order the Counting Buddy in the book. Some years we give literature books, but sometimes we've done it where the parents get a Counting Buddy, and I say, pull it out at the restaurant and have the kids start to count and do different things. And so you also, have an activity where if you called out the number 6 and you wanted kids to show, one way that they could make 6, can you show me a different way that you can make 6? You might even show an amount, like I'm going to show you 6, and then I'm going to take away something, and then you have to guess how many I took away. So the Counting Buddy has multi-purposes that are a great use in the classroom. We have these in a drawer in the math salad bars and our M Cube schools, the Molding Math Mindset schools. The other product that I developed is called Deco Dots. It's one of my favorite ones. We have a new character that matches our math mites, who are kind of pictured in our poster over there. But they kind of all live in Mathville. This is a Math Mite Junior, and his name's Dotson because he has a dots of cards that have dots on them. And so one of the things you want to be careful with as you're working with activities, whether you have Deco Dots or you cut out your own deck of dot cards rather, is the levels in which kids are. And so we have a red card. So the pack kind of comes with all of the different levels. I always say that, it's differentiatable, whether or not that's an actual word or not, but you can have Deco Dots in the classroom and it looks like we're all playing the same game, but the levels differentiate. The games that we created go from a 3-year-old all the way up to 3rd grade. And so a lot of our pre-K or preschools are really using a lot of the red deck because this deck really has all organized 5 frames. Some people think when they're doing different games, okay, now we're going to do 10 frames, but really slowing down that process and using the green deck. On our website, we have a ton of different videos that we've done for tutorial videos with Deco Dots. But the idea is that now I'm going to go in a scatter of this. So if kids are counting with Deco Dots, obviously they haven't built conservation to that level. We have a lot of preschool classrooms that the kids can go and use the red level right now independently. But maybe at the teacher station, you're working on scatters to 5, or you go into the yellow deck and it's all 10 frames. And so those are on there as well. The deck goes up higher. Half of the green deck actually splits in half and does even higher scatter. So it kind of grows with the students as they go. Our 3rd graders know that the red dots mean 10 and this means 5. So Deco Dots could be used differently, where this would be 35. Obviously in the pre-K classroom, we're only going to use those as 1, and we're not going to use scatters that high depending on where they are in their level of conservation. But we created about 15 really easy to use games. They all have tutorial videos, challenge levels. Some can be teacher stations that you can use in your classroom to really hone in on this area of numeracy. Obviously, you want to wait to do some of the subitizing skills until the kids have all these precursor skills that we've talked about. If they're able to have kinesthetic one-to-one, if they're counting, and then that relationship of quantity gets brought in with the digit recognition, so that if kids can do this example of showing, that this is 10 and then 3, they start to understand through their understanding of conservation how digits and numbers, are really developed.
Wow, that's amazing. You have such a wealth of knowledge and a wonderful variety of tools to help teachers. So let me ask you this. This brings us, I think, to the close to the end of our time together, which has been quite enlightening. But if it's somebody watching today was to take away only one thing from your session, we like to call that our gold nugget. What would
Yeah.
that one thing be?
I think what I would want, pre-K and preschool teachers to know the most is that even though you have this push for standards about, that kids, that my child's preschool teacher thought they should count to 100 and they could skip count by 10, none of those things have to do with numeracy. And those are just like singing the ABCs, and that there's more to that. And so the pyramid that I've kind of developed that it really shows the developmental layers. I think honoring that in our preschool classrooms and knowing that we have kids coming in on one end or the other, that the kids will build the numeracy layers as they're introduced, but that it has to go slow to go fast. That's kind of a motto I use with a lot of our schools, is that we want the kids to have the skills yesterday. So, over and over again, counting 1 to 1 on a manipulative is not going to make it develop faster. You have to know the developmental layers of a child's brain development to know where to go. And so I really think that takeaway message for teachers is to go in with a different perspective. Most of the math books and the math resources that we use, they don't include this part of development. They kind of just assume that kids are coming in, they're counting, and they should be able to match the number to the amount. And there's all these like worksheets, we don't need worksheets. We don't need cute things. It just is really about that play and understanding the levels of development. So if you have kids that are at that real objects in the physical world, or eventually then at that kinesthetic level, now when you get to that point of subitizing, they're going to get there, but not without the developmental layers in place. So kind of keeping that in your mind. Some of our teachers take the pyramid that I could certainly include with this, is they put it on their wall and just kind of reminded, they're not getting it here, but I know they're here and they're eventually going to get there, just like you would do with reading.
Right. I love it.
Yeah.
So let us know, where can we find you online if our teachers want to continue the conversation, learn more? Where's the best place to find you?
So I'm on Twitter under Shannon Samolsky, my previous name. That one's a great way to find us. The other way is our Facebook is probably our biggest audience. We're certainly trying to build up Instagram and things, but if you search our company name, Strategic Intervention Solutions, on Facebook. The other great way that our teachers subscribe is on our website, on SIS4teachers.org. You can subscribe there, and we have kind of a great kind of giveaway for the web, for kind of our whole summit that we're doing. That if you kind of click on the free download that you're going to get, which actually is going to be one of my favorite games for Deco Dots, which is called Same Less More. It comes with a game, it's differentiated, and it comes with an accountability sheet so that you are starting to connect the numbers with that. If you click on that link, it actually will go right to our website where you can subscribe. I blog once a week on all of these different topics that we're doing, not just in math. I also have other early childhood topics that I still do, but I'm mainly doing, say, 98% math. But our friends like to join us through subscribing or our Facebook.
Wonderful. I want to thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you for all of you watching. So if you would like to spend a little more time with any of the ideas and suggestions that Shannon made in this session or any of the others, don't forget you can bring the sessions home with you along with some terrific bonuses. Just click on the link below, and don't forget, prices go up the day after the conference ends. And until next time, I'm Vanessa Levin, and this is Shannon McCartney. Thanks,
you.
Shannon.
Take care. Thanks so much for having me.